guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Kuzbu's like, we're starting. Good. Okay. Awesome. How does it get better than this? Welcome, everybody, past, present, and future, who is tuning in to Talk to the Entities Specialty Spotlight Focus on Children and Entities. I am Shannon O'Hara, the founder and creator of Talk to the Entities, and I am joined by two Talk to the Entities facilitator and children and entity experts, now Ashida and Dr. Anthony Mattis, my beautiful friends. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.
So we're getting together today to create a place for those of you guys that are looking for something different, that know something else is possible, that might be lacking the tools, the confidence, the clarity, the direction to deal with the topic of entities, how it relates to our children and how it related to us as children. One of the phenomenons that gets ignored, much to our psychological, physiological, and emotional detriment, is the reality of entities. Talk to the Entities is designed to educate, to empower, to unlock, and to access a cleaner, easier, practical interaction with the spirit world so that those of us that are aware of entities don't become insane people farther down the track. So we're doing a whole 12 months of focus on a different Talk to the Entities specialty topic. Children and Entities is the first. And I invited Nal and Anthony to join me because they both have children. They are both experienced, seasoned Talk to the Entities and Access Consciousness facilitators and have some pretty amazing stories and tools to share. So let's start this off, you guys. Will you guys share your coolest children and entities experience story? Or it doesn't have to be one, but let's give some insight into the cool ways in which these tools can impact our children's lives and our lives.
Sure. I can start. This was actually before I even started Access. But my daughter, Aria, she started talking about seeing angels before we even had a conversation with her about angels. So it was almost like every day she'd say, while we'd be changing her diaper or something at 2 years old, she's like, "Daddy, I see angels. Daddy, I see angels," like every day for months and months and months. And what was interesting was then her mom passed away almost 6 months later. And I was almost wondering what she was aware of with as far as her mom making a transition or the transition. So and then after that, she stopped, which I thought was interesting. And then further down the line, when I started taking the entities classes, I learned, part of the reason why that happens when, the kids have the awarenesses and stuff, but then if the parents aren't encouraging the awarenesses, if they don't have the tools or that sort of playground to develop these capacities, they start shutting it down little by little, especially when they don't see anybody else doing it, like their peers.
Big time. Big time. Cool.
So that was really cool. And now she says to me, she's like, she's 16 years old now. And she's like, "I wish I had that capacity." I'm like, "Well, you do. You've just been trying to be really normal for the last, however many years,
Right. And that's like a beautiful insight, two beautiful insights that you indicated. One is which, if the parents aren't encouraging, right? And that's one of the main premises of children and entities is for parents that actually want to be able to empower their children or not make their children wrong, or just even be able to deal with children that might be in entity awareness reaction. I do a lot of sessions with a lot of parents and grandparents who come to me and their children are possessed, quote unquote. And it becomes a conversation about how to work with their children in their awareness of entities rather than their child being wrong and something that you need to suppress. Mm-hmm. So thank you for indicating that about the encouragement piece. And then the being normal part. Wow, how much is that the antithesis of being aware of stuff that's different?
Yep.
Cool.
Totally.
Yeah, in my case too, I started Access when my daughter was 3 years old. So she was coming to the classes, talk to the entities and entity TTT CF classes on all that. And during that time, um, you know, I didn't really teach her because like she was with me and she received all the energy from the classes and stuff. And when I first started TTT tools with my daughter was when she was around 10 years old. And one time she had headache at school. Then school called me. I went hard. I went school to pick her up. Then on the way back, I got some awareness and asked her, why don't we just do the entity clearings together? Then, I said, Truth, who are you? Truth, who are you before that? And she followed me in English and in Japanese both. And all of a sudden, when we finished clearing, she said, oh my gosh, all of a sudden, the heaviness she had around shoulder, it's all gone. And she actually said, it feels like two little puppies were here, but now those puppies are gone. Then, so that was her actual experience that she felt with her bodies. And just like Anthony says, when she was around that age, she knew that I've been doing this talk to the entities and access work, and she was a bit. She had this point of view of from this reality as well. So she was kind of, she was kind of skeptical about what I do. So she has lots of awareness, but she also so aware of the point of view and judgment from this reality too. So for me, using these tools and learning the tools of talk to the entities, we learn it together. So that was the journey we came together.
Cool. Yeah. And I guess my story is I actually have two stepchildren who I've been with since they were very, very little. But I'm going to say, I'm going to go out and say they're definitely more normal than me. They are definitely not, I definitely, if you go for different, I would win that race every time. And they're beautiful, magical, peaceful healers and really incredible people. And I win the weird race for sure. But one of the things that, I guess the story of children and entities that I would share would be my own story of being somebody growing up with a lot of entity sensitivity in a world that does not support that as a reality. And being raised by a man who was, I actually, both my parents were open and non-judgmental of entities. That was actually like a thing in my house. My parents were very alternative thinkers, and I was quite empowered, which is, I credit a lot of, how I was raised to what I was able to go on and create with the Talk to the Entities body of work later in adult life. But I went through a huge period, teenage years. So Anthony, there's maybe hope yet, of really trying to shut down that awareness. Not even cognitively. It was something that I knew was weird, that I did not want to be judged for, and that I didn't really want to deal with. And I really shut it down hard. And it led to a huge array of psychological difficulties for me, severe depression, huge amount of social anxiety. And it wasn't until I said yes to my awareness of entities, even though it felt so uncomfortable for me to do so, that all those psychological symptoms went away. And what I learned was that when you suppress, avoid, repress, and don't deal with entities, if you're an entity-sensitive person, entities don't just disappear. Your awareness doesn't stop. It just mutates and morphs until you either one day are in enough pain that you are willing to look at the world different or do something different, because pain is a wonderful motivator, or in a lot of people's cases, they try to stop the issue through drugs, alcohol, suicide, etc. I mean, I think that pretty much covers it, actually.
It sure does.
So, and so one of the things I love to add to this conversation is like, if we lived in conscious societies, how would we view entities? How would the conversation about the spirit world and the reality of the spirit world show up in those kinds of societies? And that's really what we're here to invite all of you guys that are hearing this, looking for this, that know that something else is possible, that you might be more of a source for a different possibility. And you're going to have to trust that.
Yeah.
So what are some of your guys' favorite tools to use with your kids?
Well, I'll start first. I mean, just to give everybody perspective, when I started, the kids were 11, 9, and 3, and now they're 24, 22, and 16. And so, I've had the benefit to go through the teenage years, and I naively went about it with such intense enthusiasm and control when I started the tools that, especially the boys, they had to separate a lot so they can find their own reality. So it seemed like everything I did as a parent backfired, right? And they both sort of kind of went off the deep end in their own respective ways. And I won't go into the details. And, all 3 of them have such intense dynamic capacities with the spirit world in their own way. And so now I would, one of the things we learn when we first come to Access is to be in and live in as interesting point of view, so you can get an allowance of everything. And that was something that I was not being as a parent. Okay. I thought inspiring, controlling them, preventing them from destroying their lives was what I needed to do and be as a parent. And so as I started to watch them really try to fit in, I noticed that the more I would try to help them, the further and further they would separate. And that was really hard to observe. And so one of the things that kind of kept me in the game, so to speak, was just remembering your story. And like, you grew up with the founder of Access Consciousness. You knew you had a capacity, like absolutely knew you did. And you still, avoided it, right?
Oh,
for
yeah.
years. And that's what's happening with them. I'm watching that now. They're coming around a little bit, but still hesitant. So I have to learn to keep my mouth shut, which is really hard for someone that's aware as much as I am. And then also sort of took on the role as mother and father after their mom died. So for me, one of the tools that I've been really leaning into, I would say more in the year of 2024 than all the 13 years I've been in Access, was allowance and being an interesting point of view. And it has not been easy. But when I've done it and got present with it, I was able to finally perceive sort of like whatever that future possibility was dissolving into infinite choice. And it's really just up to them to choose their future.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I actually didn't expect that direction of insight, but I love it. Like, because it can be so easy when it's just, parenting, number one. I mean, this topic, it has the added complexity of adding parenting to it, which is like, come on, that's like astrophysics, like in another universe. It's so, it is hard. And anybody who's a parent can probably relate to feeling unsuccessful with their kids. And I love sort of the age that your kids are too, because you're dealing with a wide spectrum of older children who have their own points of view, that need to find their own way. And if you are the parent who has chosen awareness and you have to watch your kids hurt themselves by not opening up to greater the ease that awareness can create, you have to let them suffer, which actually I think you're bringing up a real parenting tip.
Exactly.
for your own experience. Do you have the experience of using one of the Talk to the Entities tools in a successful way with one or more of your children?
Well, yeah. I mean, one time, one of my kids was like literally going through hysteria, and where he was like literally consumed. I'm like, do I need to take you to the emergency room?
Right.
And I was talking to your dad about it, and like out of the blue, he asked, he's like, did he open up a portal? Like it was like random, but it was like 9 days of hysteria. We couldn't get to it. He asked that question, everything went and at that moment, as I'm having this conversation with your father, my son was actually having a session with a psychologist who also does access consciousness. And they were getting to something similar in the same moment. So I was actually closing the portal. By the time I was done, he was done with the session. I went upstairs. He turned and looked at me. He's like, I'm good now. Like
Right.
that, after like 9 days of 24 hours a day hysteria.
Yeah. And this is what I aforementioned about how unacknowledged entity awareness can lead to a huge amount of psychological, emotional, and physiological distress. Not to scare anybody, but just like I'm hoping that statement like stimulates some sort of inspiration to reach for something easier. So you brought a rather advanced concept of Talk to the Entities into the conversation. Do you want to just like in 60 seconds or less teach people about portals?
Well, they're doorways between one dimension and the next, or one dimension and another dimension, where you have, an unlimited amount of entities and beings and creatures, whoever and whatever, coming in and out on a regular basis. And so anything could be a portal, it could be your closet, a mirror, it could be you, even your body. And it typically creates a lot of havoc in people's lives because it's like an infinite amount of a variety of energies that an individual has to try to contend with, besides their own awarenesses about, their own personal lives. And so people tend to get overwhelmed and creates a lot of panic attacks. It could lead to certain mental disorders if you're not turning towards these things and facing your awarenesses and closing the portal. And goodness gracious, it's just unbelievable. And so to me, it answered a lot of questions as to what their mom went through too. So, learning this information has been such a gift for me, excuse me, and it answered a lot of questions as to, when people are struggling with mental health issues, as they would say, what else could be possible and be going on in their universes. And so when closing the portal with the tools that we learn in Talk to the Entities, it's just amazing how that overwhelm of energies seems to dissipate and the person is more relaxed. So
cool. Thank you for that.
Yeah. One other thing too that was really cool that was actually just recent. My daughter's 16 right now, and she's kind of going through the beginning of teenage years, and she was like just really depressed one day. And I'm like, what's up? And she's like, she goes, I feel like mom's around, her deceased mother. She was only 2.5 years old when her mother died. So she doesn't really know her mom, but her presence has been really intense. And so what was really cool was using the Talk to the Entities communication flowchart, where we learn how to ask an individual entity, specific questions to get an idea of their overall sense and vibration. What is it that they want? Do they need you to contribute to them? Would they like to contribute to you? And so we were literally driving on the way to school one day, and we kind of just went through that process. And she didn't want to do it at first. She's like, no, Dad, I don't need to, it was like one of those things. And I'm like, let's just try. Even if you feel like it's your imagination, let's just do it. And then as we're doing it, she just starts to cry. And I'm like, cool. I'm like, your sadness or your mom's? She's sad she can't be here for you. Because one of the things that her mother used to say when we would be going for a stroll in the park when she was alive was, she's like, I want to be there, especially for Aria when she's a teenager and starts dating boys.
And there she is. She's
There
being
she
there
is.
for you.
Exactly. And that's, and so it's hard. And, and I forgot. I thought I would never forget as a parent what it was like to be a teenager and try to fit in. But I did. I did.
Oh, yeah. Tough stuff. Tough stuff.
So that was a cool experience to watch it change.
Just quickly, before we get to Nao's cool tools, Anthony mentioned 2 other Talk to the Entities specialties that are coming down the track in the next few months, one of which is mental disorders and entities, and the other is communication with entities. Mm-hmm. So please, if you're listening to this and you're a Talk to the Entities novice or have more interest, or these areas are hugely specific, and we know how overwhelming peeking into the world of entities can be as an adult, especially because you've never been educated, taught, or empowered. So just know that those resources for education and empowerment do exist. Yeah, cool. So now.
Yeah, one of the very simple tools is that when my daughter was 3 or 4, very small, she's usually a happy girl, don't cry, no tantrum. But one day, that was evening time, around 4 5 p.m., all of a sudden she gets so angry and she went so crazy. Then I didn't know what to do in the beginning. Then all of a sudden I thought, oh, why don't I just do the demon clearings? Then I did that. And right after I finished it, oh my gosh, she came back to the usual sana. Then what I realized that maybe she was perceiving the energy of demon. I guess in Japan we have this saying, around sunset time, there's a time bleeding or space breathing, so that different dimensions, beings from the different dimension can come to this dimension. So my understanding, my awareness is that she was perceiving. It's not that she was becoming demonic or anything, but I think that was her awareness.
Right. And she was having she was being really expressive, and that's I did a session a couple months ago with a woman who actually inspired this whole Talk to the Entity Specialty campaign. And she had contacted me because her granddaughter was having hysterical, uncontrollable behavior. And her and her mom were they just could not work. They'd tried everything and nothing was working. And she suspected that it could be entity related. So she came to me and we did the session, and we worked with the girl, and I worked with both the mother and the grandmother, and it was the girl completely calmed down, and both the mother and the grandmother were still in disbelief that that's what was going on. And I thought, wow, people really need more support. Parents really need more support about how to handle that. And oh my God, could you imagine a world where children who are just flipping out due to entity awareness and demons kind of under the umbrella of entities, the children who actually got that piece, and actually now you've brought up twice about clearing with your daughter. In your first story, you talked about picking her up at school and using the clearing tools. So I just want to highlight that for everyone who's listening. We have entity clearings in Access. They're actually the Access consciousness entity clearings. I stole them from my dad and put them in Talk to the Entities, and he let me, but they're so effective. And we say as Talk to the Entities facilitators that knowing how to clear entities can handle 80 to 85% of the entity interference you're ever going to experience. So just knowing how to clear entities can be such a gift for you, for your children, and for the entities.
Yeah, what I love about clearings is that it's empowerment. I mean, it's asking questions. So it's not that in Japan, I think we have this image that entity clearing is like, more like exorcism,
Right.
all the
Right.
bad things go away, that kind of stuff. But I get the energy of talk to the entities clearing is very different from that. And I even sometimes, oftentimes receive energy of gratitude from entities, just by running the clearings. I received a lot, so I love it.
I love hearing that you guys also experience that, because that has been such a prevalent theme throughout my Talk to the Entities journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Thank you guys so much for sharing your stories, your tools, your energy, your beautiful faces. If you guys are listening to this out there in the world, whenever you hear this or watch this, you can find Talk to the Entities classes facilitated in Japanese by Nao, and also by Anthony in English. They're listed on the Access Consciousness website and the Talk to the Entities website. Everything will be linked wherever you're viewing this episode. There is also a Children and Entities specialty class that many of the tools and perspectives that we're talking about were originally facilitated by me some years ago, and that exists in the Talk to the Entities shop. If you missed any of the Children and Entity focused free content that we did over the month, there will be a link to the Talk to the Entities Children and Entities landing page on the Talk to the Entities website. What gift can you be with your awareness? And what would it take for talking to entities to become more cool than ignoring entities? Thank you guys so much. We love you.
Thank you. Thanks, Shannon. Bye-bye.